This is Perspectivas Latinas, a community service of CAN TV. I'm your host, Juan Carlos Hernandez. For 35 years, Family Focus has helped Chicago families develop solid foundations through their wide array of support services for individual children, families, and entire communities. And now they will play a more active role in serving the immigrant community. With us today to talk about their work, we have Mariana Osoria. Welcome.
Thank you.
Great. Let's start off by talking about the history of the organization.
Sure. It was founded just over 35 years ago by a woman named Bernice Weisbord. She lived in Evanston and really thought that it would be a good idea to have a place where new moms can come and meet other new moms, play with their children, have a safe place that maybe they, didn't know their neighbors or have a lot of family members with very young children. So she said, let's get this place together and invite moms to come over. And they plastered the community with flyers and said, do you want to know about your child at this young age? Come over and meet other moms. And that's how it all started.
Really? My perception, I think the perception of a lot of people of Evanston is it's very middle class, very affluent. Was it to work with that community or the other side of Evanston we don't think about very often?
Well, I think that what Bernice was really thinking about is that all new moms need somewhere to come and somewhere to talk about issues that are going on, because I don't know if you have any children, but if you did, and most people will know that they don't really come with any instructions. And so
that's true.
Many new moms aren't really sure, why is my baby crying all the time? I fed them, I've changed them, and they might just not know or be questioning what are some of the things they should be doing as a new mom. And there might not be a lot of folks in the community that just gave birth. So having a place where new moms can come together, build social supports with each other, ask questions that maybe they're afraid to ask because they just don't know the answer to. That's really what Bernice's vision was, to really have a place where social supports were built and communities were built.
Yeah, I was about to say that it was a way of building community, reducing isolation. Did she start this just by herself, said, I'm going to do this and I'm going to gather them in my home or some center?
Well, Bernice Weisbord is an amazing woman, and like any amazing woman and leader, she knows that she had to work with other people in the community. She had been doing some work along developing what's called the Principles of Family Support Practice, which really is the driving force of Family Focus. And so she was working with a lot of folks. She worked with a woman called Dolores Holmes, who was the first director of the Evanston Center. And so, yeah, I mean, like all of us even today, we know we can't do this work alone. We partner with a lot of community organizations to help us to really support families.
So it starts in Evanston, it grows quickly, and then it spreads. You have how many centers and where? There
are currently 7 centers. There are 3 in the city of Chicago, so 1 in Inglewood, 1 in the Hermosa Bellman-Cragen area, and then 1 in Lawndale. In addition to that, we have several suburban locations. The Evanston location is still there. We have a location in Highland Park. We have 1 in Aurora, and we have 1 in Cicero, which is connected to one of the Chicago locations. And most recently, we have 1 in DuPage. It's called Family Focus DuPage, and it just came about a year and a half ago. So that's really exciting.
Wow. So this growth happened slowly, or, I mean, you said this one in DuPage about just a year and a half ago. The others just sprouted up overnight, or it's something that you, as an organization, developed slowly over the years?
One of the things that Family Focus will always do is ensure that the community is interested in bringing a family focus to that community. So a very good example of that is our current CEO was the very first director of Erie Neighborhood House, and she was also a family focus mom, and she went to a family focus that was located in Lincoln Park. And when she went back to work at Erie House, she said, I want a family focus in this community. And so she worked with her partners, she talked with local parishes, other community organization and parents to really get community support, to get that buy-in. And that's how Family Focus, what is now called Nuestra Familia, started, because of her work to really bring that in there, and also because the community wanted it. So any movement that we have made has always been based on what the community's interest is, and that there is definitely support there.
Okay, so you say that there's a community interest there. How do you bring that voice of the community into the organization? Do you have committees, or you have people fill out questionnaires? How does that
That's a
work?
really good question, and I think every community approaches it a little differently. So some might be, working on natural coalitions that are already developed.
Right.
Other ways might be reaching out to the community. For example, our center, Nuestra Familia, we have a parent council, and so that parent council meets regularly, meets once a month, and is one of the reasons why we ended up moving from our Westtown location to where we currently are in Hermosa and in Cicero, because those communities were shifting and changing, and parents were saying, we love the programs, but we don't live there anymore.
Right.
So come by where we live. And so that's an example of one way that it might occur.
Wow. And how did you get wrapped up in this organization? But before that, let's talk about why are you in the nonprofit world? Are you as an individual?
Well, I think growing up, I grew up in a Latino home, and I'm Mexican and Puerto Rican, and both of my parents, had immigrant parents, and so I think that they really fomented in me a love of giving back to the community, about volunteering, even though they didn't call it volunteering.
Right.
There was always kind of like watching out for each other, looking at, what injustices were. My father was politically involved, and I had been gone to some mayoral debates and, heard things here and there. So it just kind of fed me. I didn't know that was a career opportunity.
Right.
Eventually I found that it was, and that's how I'm here. I just really believe in developing the community and supporting them.
Yeah. How did you find that that moment that this was a career option? What sparked that, or what did you see, or what did you hear? How did you get involved in something like this and make it a career?
Wow, that's a really good question. I think that the first thing is, as I mentioned, I didn't even know social work as a career. I didn't know what that was. But when I first got out of college, I needed to find a job. And so there was a job opportunity that actually would help me pay my rent. So I took it, and that was as a case manager. And that was really where I recognized that there was a career. I had a great supervisor who really told me about social work, told me about getting a master's degree. And those 2 years that I was there, I really learned a lot about the field and about the work, and decided I'm going to get my master's degree and commit myself to this work.
She mentored you then along this path, and you just decided, I have to do this.
Yes.
So how long have you been with the organization now?
I've been there almost 7 years.
7 years. And tell me about some of the most impactful experiences you've had as the director. You're the director of...
I'm the center director of Nuestra Familia, which we're located in Hermosa, Belmont-Cragen, and in Cicero.
Okay. So tell me about, well, you could tell me about your day-to-day experiences, but I want to hear about some of those moments where you've thought, wow, we're doing good work. This is awesome. I'm glad I'm here.
Well, I'm going to tell you something recently. We recently in Chicago lost some pretty serious funding, and that is actually going to reduce some of our capacity to serve some of our families. Probably over 100 families that we served last year, we won't be able to serve this year. And normally, an organization would be very upset about that and disappointed, which we are.
Right.
However, at the same time, one of the things as I was thinking late at night, pondering this issue, I was like, we could probably train some of our parents to do some components of this work. And the reason I say that is because we have been developing leadership in many of our parents. So parents on the parent council, they learn a lot of leadership development. We take some of our parents through a course called Abriendo Puertas, which is a popular education focused training for early childhood, but really does develop a lot of leadership, and we're training parents to facilitate that. And we've taken some of our parents through COFI, which is community organizing, and so we have a lot of leaders, and I believe that we could train some of them to do some of the work where we lost this money to actually do the work. And so if you think about that, that's pretty powerful, right? That's telling you what many social workers will say all the time is you're trying to work yourself out of a job. Well, this is living proof of being able to do that. And so, sure, we need the dollars, we need the funding, but in absence of that, we can't just sit around. And I think our parents have said to us that they're willing to go get training. They're willing to learn some of these skills and to, implement this program, even if it's a little bit less number of families. So that's pretty inspiring. If you're not worried about how you have to pound the pavement all the time to get these dollars, you know that you're building leadership in people. So right. That's, I think pretty amazing.
Definitely. You mentioned a program, Abriendo Puertas. Tell me about that. What is it?
Well, this is through a partnership we have with the Latino Policy Forum. It's actually not only a family focus. Many organizations are implementing Abriendo Puertas, but it is a curriculum that was developed by parents. It was developed in Spanish, so it wasn't translated into Spanish like many curricula are, and it was developed by parents and educators to be able to provide early childhood development instruction to parents using a popular education model. In other words, it's not me, the expert, that's sharing all this information with you. It's a communication that goes back and forth. So we learned as a facilitator as much from the participants than they learned from each other.
Right. You said popular education. This is the Brazilian educator, Paulo Freire. Is it based on his ideas, or?
Well, there's some dialogue about whether they were his original ideas or not, but yes, that's most people are familiar with Paulo Freire, who has done some work around popular education.
So what happens in this, I guess, capacity building for parents, training them to carry out these workshops or courses? Or?
Right, it's a series of 8 sessions, a total of 10, and there's some celebratory at the end. So one example might be that they would focus on a developmental pathway for a child. The facilitator would prepare this beforehand using information that's actually going on in the community, maybe pull some articles, talk with other parents, and it's really a dialogue. Like how do you handle XYZ health issue with your child or with your family. And so it's really an opportunity for parents to take leadership, share their knowledge, because they all have some skill and knowledge, and they share that with each other.
And you said there's something celebratory. What happens when they go through this?
Well, at Family Focus Nuestra Familia, we kind of make it a big deal, and so we start out with a big event to celebrate that they're actually going to engage in this session, and all the family is invited, fathers are invited, and then at the end there is a celebration that they've completed the process. And so a couple of our parents we actually send to have training now, even though they've been through the process. They've gone through the process, and now we're going to be trained to be facilitators of the process. So it's not even our staff anymore that's doing it, it's actually parents that are facilitating it.
Wow, that's quite empowering. What have some of the parents who have gone through these sessions and they're on the other side and some time has passed, how long has Nuestra Familia been doing this?
We're in our 3rd year.
How have some of these parents that have first started 3 years ago or did this 3 years ago, how have they responded? What have they told you?
Well, I'll tell you about someone who actually went through it 2 years ago. They started we also have a very small program in Melrose Park. And we didn't have a parent council there, and some of these parents who had gone through some training on advocacy and then also started doing Abriendo Puertas came to us and said, we really need a parent council here. We want what's happening in Chicago and in Cicero to happen here. And so they came to us and said, help us develop this parent council, and they did. They developed a parent council in Melrose Park, and they also did outreach to the mayor there, and they went to local businesses to try to fundraise and support programs in Melrose Park. They had one day a week programming, and they were advocating for more than one. And fortunately, we were able to get some funding, and this year we're going to be there twice a week. So it's pretty exciting, and that really was. It certainly was a vision of ours, but our parents really kind of moved us along that path and helped us to get more community support. And so those are some of the things that they actually do.
So the sense I'm getting from what you're telling me is that your organization doesn't just serve people, it actually helps people I guess, build skills, recognize what they have, and become leaders.
Absolutely, yes.
But what's one thing that's interesting that I found out about your organization is that you start working with people at age 0, right? You help people along the path from age 0 to adulthood. Tell me about that program for, I guess, mothers-to-be, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
Well, I don't know if you know this, but about 90% of the brain develops between the ages of 0 and 5. So if you think about it, that's a pretty important time in a person's life. So one of the things that, as I mentioned, we started off with new moms, new parents, is really helping parents to recognize how important they are in developing their child's brain, and that those first few years of life are critical to set a foundation for the future.
Right.
So, you know, we do things like home visiting programs. So we go to people's homes that have young children and talk to them about the different developmental stages, and, you know, give them tools and tips on how they can help their child develop on track. We also have center-based activities where we'll talk to parents about, you know, what they can be doing with books and with toys to help develop, whether it's motor skills or language development or literacy, all of those things, because that really is the time to build the foundation, so that when they get into kindergarten and go on to the rest of their education, they have these really critical foundations that'll help them be successful.
Does this program of supporting young children and their mothers, it includes a Hug-a-Book? Is that part of that?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
We have a Hug-a-Book program, and we're actually rolling it out again this year, just across all of our centers. And what that is it's a lending library program, so that's one component of it. It also is a training and facilitation to our classroom teachers, so that they are able to understand how to bring a book to life. And then we'll also work with our families so they can understand how to bring a book to life. In addition to that, it looks at books and evaluates them. So it's not just any book. They have a list of high-end quality books that are either in English or Spanish to really help families and children develop language and literacy skills.
What about parents who are Spanish-speaking, Spanish-dominant, or know very little English, and say, well, I want my child to learn English. Why should I read to them in Spanish? I just want to cut Spanish out. I'm worried about them and their future. What do you tell some parents?
Well, it's a really good question, and that certainly has happened. There is some research that has been done that talks about, you know, that parents should speak to their children in their best language, that actually does help to develop language and literacy skills. So parents that, you know, are dominant in Spanish should read and speak to their children in Spanish. It's going to be what helps them to understand and acquire language and literacy. And so that doesn't minimize the reality that, you know, they will be exposed and should be exposed to another language. But we really encourage our parents to speak to their children in their best language. That's where they have the most vocabulary, and that's what their children will be exposed to. And so vocabulary is an important piece to literacy and language acquisition.
So it's not cutting a language out, but it's actually giving them the strength of their experience. Parents giving them vocabulary, that practice. I guess also, the way I see it, that connection, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Now, you take care of, help take care of young families, 0 to 3. What happens once a child is in elementary school and going through? What kind of programs do you have for them?
We also have community school programs, so we provide after-school programs and support schools to bring in resources into their schools to develop that. And so we have before and after-school programs in many Chicago public schools and in some suburban schools. So we are on the continuum and supporting and developing youth as well as very young children.
Okay, and for teenagers, you also have programs for teens, correct?
Absolutely, yes. We're in several high schools as well, and, you know, like our young children's programs, we talk to parents there for our teen programs, we talk to teens and we ask them, you know, what are they interested in? What would you like to see? At one of our schools, we took recently, I don't know if you're familiar with Posse Scholars, but
No.
it's a program to get scholarships for students that, and then they go off in a posse together to the school. But we had about 15 students that we recommended for a Posse scholarship, and so we were supporting them through the process of interviewing and filling out applications and all of those additional support services that they might not have access to.
So you work closely with teachers and administrators at certain schools, or are you a separate component that
Both.
just both?
Both. So in some settings we are based in the school, and in those cases we work very, very closely with the principal and with the teachers and the counselors. And in other settings, at some of our other centers, we have program at the center. And so in those cases, if there's a school in the community, we always try to reach out to them to see, you know, if there's something they're interested in, that their students might, you know, benefit from us providing at Family Focus. We'll do that as well.
And how do teachers and administrators respond to this work? Do some teachers say, well, you're kind of invading my space here, or are they always supportive?
Well, one of the things that I think is the way we approach it. So we always enter a school as a guest and recognize that we are guests in their school. And so as you would in anybody's home that you're a guest in, you're not going to say, this is the way you should do things. You're going to ask them, what would you like us to do? How can we support your work? How can we think together to address problems that, you know, your students might be facing or the CUTE community might be facing? That's very critical, very important to do as a first step, and continue to recognize that you are still always a guest in that school.
What's most, I've taught at the high school level before, and I remember some of the challenges. What's most challenging about working with adolescents? It's a very confusing age in many ways, but it's also a very exciting age. There's so much to look forward to, so much you can do. You're basically learning to be independent. Tell me about some of the challenges of working with teens.
You've you know, as a parent of a teen, I could tell you some challenges. But you're right, it's also very exciting. I was just last week talking with a group of teens that were teen leaders, and you know, they feed me and they drive me. You know, they really are.
Keep you young?
Yes, I think so. And they help to, you know, think about what might be impossible. They see possibilities. I think the other challenges are, you know, limitations that are realities, and we can support to mitigate that. So things like, you know, youth that might be undocumented, or youth that, you know, don't have a lifetime of experience, you know, taking tests and don't do very well on them. So their expectations to go to college might be challenged because of, you know, tests that they get or grades and things like that, sometimes not really related to their actual capacity to excel. And so I think those are the challenges that we face that are the most difficult, because there's so much promise in our youth, and you know, we want them to be successful. We want them to get to the next stage. And so you know, those are some of the things that we try to mitigate in some way with the schools and with the community, but some of them are difficult to overcome.
Right, definitely. So do you do test prepping or test coaching, or you just say, no, let's look at you as an individual and how you're doing overall, or how do you respond to those? Because we're in such a test-driven society.
Right. Well, one of the things that we've started to do is really work from the parents' end, supporting parents, giving them the knowledge and tools of what their children are going to be facing. So I think, you know, explaining to them the process of college application, the process of what kind of courses their children should be taking. So I think it's an approach that is one with the youth, but also with parents, to make sure, because many parents aren't aware of all the things that are involved in applying to college, or, you know, being successful even in high school. So that's one of the ways that we do that. And then also partnering with the community, the school community, so counselors and things like that.
Okay, one thing that I found curious about your work is you have groups specifically for men, right?
Right.
Tell me, I found that curious, because a lot of times I think, at least in a lot of our community, even though it's, I think we have that vision, but it's probably false, is that men tend not to tend to be busy earning the bread, right, being the breadwinners, but and not too involved in other aspects of life. Is that what you found, and is that why these groups were formed, or what was that a response to?
Well, one of the things, at least at Nuestra Familia, that we believe is that, you know, fathers are very important. They're very important in their child's lives, and even when there is a male involved in our communities, they impact other children's lives.
Right.
And so we wanted to really be able to engage them in programming that was specific to their needs. So like, you know, if we're doing something for our parents or for our youth or for, you know, very young children, it should be appropriate for them. And so we believe that, you know, fathers need a place where they feel safe, where they're respected, and where they can engage and talk about things that males and fathers need to talk about. And so it has been very intentional. We've been growing that program along the way. We've had it's a little bit longer for some centers, and for others it's much newer. And so again, we're asking fathers to tell us what that curriculum should look like, how we should implement it, and what additional things we should have. Okay,
we're running short on time here. Just tell us about the Immigrant Welcome Center, please, briefly, and what you're going to be offering to them.
Sure. This is really exciting. We've actually had the Illinois Welcoming Center in the northwest side of Chicago since February, and we also have a center in Aurora since February. And that really is a place for immigrants from any country, really, to come and be able to access services in one location. So they might come in and say they're interested in, you know, learning on how to become a citizen, but at the same time there might be other state resources and services that they didn't realize they can access or, you know, had the opportunity to engage in. So we would be able to assess them right on the spot and connect them to those services and not have to send them go to this place and that place and this place and the other place. It truly is kind of like a one-stop shop for new immigrants that the state of Illinois is trying to welcome.
That's awesome. And this is available in what communities again?
Well, there's actually several centers, but Family Focus has the communities in Hermosa, Belmont, Cragen, so the northwest side of Chicago, and in Aurora.
Okay. Well, thanks. And I guess if people want more information, they can go to your website.
Correct. Okay. www.family-focus.org.
Okay, thanks so much. Perspectivas Latinas is a community service of CAN TV. If your nonprofit organization would like to work with CAN TV, call 312-738-1400 and ask for nonprofit services. Tune into Perspectivas Latinas for local issues and concerns every Thursday at 8:30 p.m. on CAN TV 21. I'm Juan Carlos Hernandez. Thank you for joining us.